What is your vision for the future of finance in Europe? What changes and innovations would you like to see in the way financial services operate? Where do you see room for improvement? But I'm also interested in hearing how you and your peers are interacting with the world of finance. Which tools do you use? Where do you get information on financial matters? How important is it for you that your investments are sustainable? And before we start, I would like to encourage you to be bold, to be open in sharing your thoughts, because my role today is to listen to you and learn from you. I want to thank you all again for coming, for being here today, and I very much look forward to a fruitful dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And now, so that we get to know one another better in the room and also for our online audience, I'd like each one of the participants to, in a minute or less, your name and what you do. Let's start on this side.
Hello, Commissioner Albuquerque and fellow participants. My name is Mille Lindberg Hansen, and I work at a consultancy company. I advise major corporations in Denmark and policymakers on ESG and EU sustainability regulations, with a particular focus on the building industry. I look forward to sharing my ideas on sustainable finance and have a engaging dialogue with the Commissioner about catalyzing capital due diligence and greenwashing. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Commissioner. My name is Luc. I'm 24 years old and I'm from the Netherlands. I actually recently changed jobs. Previously, I was working at a regulatory body working on the Listing Act and regulatory policy related to corporate finance. But I'm now working in Amsterdam in the area of credit risk. And today I would like to talk to you about the omnibus proposal that is out there. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Commissioner. My name's Kawana. I'm from Italy, and I'm a full-time student in Dublin studying economics and finance. I'm really passionate about EU integration, and I would love to share my ideas about that. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Ignas Plunksnes. I'm 20 years old. I'm from Lithuania. I'm the CEO of a kayak manufacturing company, and I'm also the chairman of an association which helps young people with financial literacy and understanding how small businesses function. I look forward for everyone to share their ideas, and I look forward to hearing your comments, Commissioner. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Elisa Uzerina. I'm from Latvia. Currently, I'm working as a business effectiveness specialist in an airline, and aviation is my favorite industry, but finance is my side passion, I would say. So I'm excited to be here today to learn from all of you, and particularly from the Commissioner, and I hope that the ideas and insights that will be shared today will help and inspire the future of finance and policy making in the EU. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Lourenço Reis. I'm 27. I'm from Portugal. And my background is in psychology and behavioral psychology. In particular, I have founded a behavioral science company to help solve the deepest issues that exist in our societies that are rooted in behavior. And so that is my passion and applied to the financial world. We need to be more informed about behavior and psychology to make more informed decisions, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about. Thank you.
Dear Commissioner, dear participants, first of all, I'd like to say it's an honor to be here, and I think it's great to have the youth policy dialogue in general, because I think it's super nice to be here and represent the youth's voice here at the highest level of EU decision making. Adding to that, I'm Lara. I'm 24 years old. I'm a student and also working here at a public affairs consultancy in Brussels. And exactly, so I'm from Austria, and I'm really looking forward to, first of all, your comments on our proposals, but also having a fruitful, engaging discussion with all of you guys. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ulisse Hattuk. I come from France, studying in Italy, and I'm 20 years old. I'm really looking forward to engaging with you. I think that Europe today is at a turning point, and we have a real risk of becoming irrelevant if we don't act fast. I'm passionate about finance, also studying it, and I hope that today we can bring something meaningful to the table. And I look forward to hearing from all of you and engaging with you. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Marcia. I'm from Spain. I'm so happy to be here and to hear all your contributions. I'm a youth advocate and the founder of a youth NGO in Spain that promotes leadership for young women of the Afro community. And I look forward to learning from all of you and to finding solutions together. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I'm Giuseppe. I come from Italy. I'm 22 years old. I'm an engineering management student. And I want to take some time to discuss about the fact that nowadays in Ukraine, people like us are dying to protect our freedom. And so I think that we should use every public occasion to remind that their effort is not unseen and that their sacrifice will be one day repaid. And this is one chance that we have to talk about them and to build a long-lasting peace that will create one day union from Lisbon to Luhansk without letting anyone down. So thank you.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Commissioner, for having us, and hello, all dear participants. It's an honor, and I'm very thankful to be here. My name is Hawa Sise, I'm 26, and I come from Finland. I'm currently I'm unemployed, so that's my view of what I'm also bringing, but I'm an independent kind of project worker / activist, so I advocate for human rights, women's rights, and also youth and finances and economy. So thank you for having me. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Commissioner. Thank you for the invite. I'm Nicholas. I'm 25 years old, originally from Germany, but live and work in London. I work at a large insurance group, and I focus on the chances and risks arising from blockchain technology and the underlying shift of financial markets. And that's what I would like to focus on today as well, to talk about how can Europe utilize this to enable the private sector to gain relevance in financial markets again.
Good morning, and thank you for having us here. I'm Ioana, I'm 22, I'm originally from Bucharest, Romania, but I'm a double major in politics and economics, focusing on the European space, so I studied in France and in Germany. I am formerly working in humanitarian aid and activism, but currently I'm a research assistant in business economics and in marketing, and I'm also quite of a tech enthusiast and digital enthusiast, so I'm looking forward to talking about digital innovation in the field of financial services today.
My name is Paweł Majcher. I'm coming here from Warsaw in Poland. On a day-to-day, I'm a master's student in maths, focusing on probability, risk, actuarial science. And today I'm hoping to join the conversation and to learn from all of you as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Martina Totova. I come from Slovakia, but I currently study international business in Prague. Now I'm onboarding in a position of expense processor in an investment company, but I have a lengthy... Sorry. Yes. But I have a background in non-formal education and youth activism and non-government organization sector, so thank you.
A big thank you to everybody, and a big thank you that we're not only on time, we're actually ahead of schedule. So that's awesome. You guys are becoming my favorite. So again, probably more for the online audience. I'm just going to quickly explain how we're going to do this. We're going to have 3 topics today: savings, investing, and financial literacy, topic 1. Topic 2, digital finance and innovation. And topic 3, sustainable finance. Now, all of you have prepared a 2-minute or less presentation that you're going to present in what we're going to do is blocks of 3 people. And then after those 3 people have presented, the Commissioner will have an opportunity to react. And if we have time, hopefully we'll have time to have some back and forth and to discuss the policy initiatives that could arise out of that. So, topic 1, savings, investing, financial literacy. Block 1. Block 1 will be on a variety of subjects, and the 3 people that will be presenting are Pavel, Lara, and Lorenzo. So, Pavel, if you could start.
Hi again. The topic that I would like to discuss is the need for European culture in personal investments, because it's something that doesn't really exist as of now in the way that it should. And I think the goals that we want to achieve, that you, Commissioner, was talking about, is something that we can only get to if we keep the money inside Europe. And we know that European companies need better access to capital, and one of the goals that I think we also can achieve is creation of startups with truly European identity, not just national one, that bring the best from all of Europe, because only companies like that, I believe, can compete on the international stage with other big players. And how we may do it is obviously a big question. One thing that I would like to discuss is how EU policies can get more agile and down to earth. Something that I noticed right now, it seems like we live in a double reality, a reality of politicians, policies, big ambitions, and a reality of financial influencers who talk about Apple, Tesla, S&P 500, and all of those American businesses. I think that may be because they don't know any better, they don't have the connection with Europe, and that's something that I think we need to tap into, to connect with the people and with the influencers who already have the reach within Europe and outside of it. And one example of how this disconnect shows is something called Pan-European pension product. It's a great idea in theory, a lot of tax incentives for Europeans to invest, and yet it seems like no one really heard or knows about it. So, and that's one example of many that I think illustrates how we really need to bridge these two worlds of what people really talk about on a day-to-day and how we Europeans want to develop as a society. Thanks.
Thank you, Pavel. Lara.
Thank you. I think it's a great that you mix this up together, because I also want to talk about the pension funds, actually. So you've mentioned it before that we have high savings rates. So we have around 33 trillion actually laying in more or less over the 1/3 in current accounts, which don't really yield the returns we would like to have, and which makes Europe lose fuel in economic growth, but also innovation. So that's important to remember. And I think also adding to the investment gap, which was mentioned by Mario Draghi in his report, so the 800 million, which is, I think, a rather conservative estimate, so it's going to be more even. We need to have more combined capital markets. So there's a lot of fragmentation. I think it's very nice to see the regained traction with the European Savings and Investment Union. So it's very nice to see that, and also the public consultation, also the results. I read already through it. So that's a very good start, I think. And coming now to my policy recommendations, I also would say that, first of all, investing needs to be made more transparent and easy accessible. So I guess there's going to be way more talk about that in the financial literacy field, so I won't go into detail here, but I think it could be, for example, a solution to have a digital investments platform, a pan-European one, where it's easy to have some access to ETFs, for example, but also the information needed so people can make those informed decisions. And adding to that, the pension systems were mentioned before by Pavel. I want to add on that as well. So there is actually the pan-European personal pension product, which is in place, but I think almost no one knows about it. So I think there is actually potential to use it, maybe advance it, and also use for example, the second pillar pension schemes, which are in place in the Netherlands, in Denmark, in Sweden, since they have significant returns. And I think we could leverage that and implement that in even more member states, I would say. And that would be it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Lorenzo.
Thank you for the shares that you made. I would like to touch on a point. My background is in psychology and behavioral science, and it's really interesting to hear you talk about providing information to people. I come from a country which is one of the least financially literate in Europe, if only Romania has a little bit less than us. But they are very good at financial behavior, so there's there's an equilibrium there. But basically what I meant to say is that usually when we talk about financial education and financial literacy, we go this route of education. Education can, a lot of the times, reinforce social inequalities because the educational programs themselves don't reach those who need it the most and they reach those who need it the less. So we have to be very careful about this. And people that are in scarcity conditions, that they are worried about paying rent, about feeding their children, we have to think about learning as an investment. And an investment has costs. And usually these people have less money, have less time because they can have multiple jobs and they have to take care of their houses. They have more cognitive constraints because we know from psychology field that when you are in scarcity conditions, you get a cognitive overload. So it's harder to process information. So if we go the route of providing education and information, we run the risk of widening the informational gap, paradoxically of widening the gap. And furthermore, these people have an negative emotions associated with money. So anxiety, fear, and all of these negative emotions. So tell me, how can we teach these people that don't have a lot of money, don't have time, don't have as much cognitive resources, and are scared of these topics? So this is my framing. So what I would like to suggest is if we do EU-wide programs, we have to be very careful and very mindful of the psychology and the behavioral science behind it. We could expand on the framework that exists on financial literacy to be more specific, to meet people where they're at. I'm not going to teach how to invest someone that can't save. And so that would be one of my policy recommendations. And the second one and the final one is that we need to simplify the banking statements to help people that have cognitive overload to understand what they are actually doing and acquiring, because it's really, really hard to understand them in these cases. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now, Commissioner, it's your opportunity, whether to react or whether clarifications or expanding on a theme. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Idas. I'll promise not to take too long, but I might need slightly more than 2 minutes. Well, thank you all. First, it was when you introduced yourselves, it was clear that this was going to be a very interesting discussion, and the first three already evidenced that, of course. Maybe I'll take it in order of your own interventions on the need for culture of retail investment. We do not have that culture because I believe we do not have the right incentives. I believe that people are all the same wherever they are. So if we give them the right incentives, they will react as we would like them to. So the issue of culture is, I think, mostly the lack of incentives for people to invest. They are not necessarily very risk-prone. They are potentially more risk-averse. But the fact is that they don't have the incentives because for many of the major life events, they feel that the welfare state does provide coverage, so they don't feel the same need as others in other geographies. But also the fact that there is often not enough available simple instruments, enough tax incentives, enough knowledge about the opportunities from financial markets, pension systems, whatever. So it's about creating really the right incentives, and that also applies for keeping money in the EU, because the reason why people are taking their money abroad is because they find those incentives in other jurisdictions, but not here in the EU. So the two things go hand in hand. If you create the right incentives here, they will use their money, they put their money to use right here. I like your idea about creating startups with a truly European identity. I think that innovative companies are probably best placed to do that than others, because typically they are from younger people who have more language skills, very comfortable with the digital environment. So that does eliminate many borders that existed before, and people can be together without being physically in the same place. So I think that is something that we should foster, truly European startups and bringing together innovators from different parts of Europe. That is also something that the Commission will be looking at. We have a strategy coming up on the startups and scale-ups, and I'm sure that will be contemplated there. You're absolutely right on the EU policies needing to be more agile. And I've been highlighting that point, we take too long to make decisions. It is a very democratic process, but it's becoming inefficient, and that is an issue. We identify a problem, we design a solution, we take a very long time discussing this, then we give long transition periods, so by the time we actually hit the ground, the problem has moved on. And that is a real problem. We need to address that. We need to be more efficient. We understand that the discussion process is democratic, necessary, obviously, but we need to do better at that, even because things are changing ever more rapidly, and we need to be able to react in timely, if I can put it like that. On the PEP that allows me to make the bridge to what Laura said. Indeed, the PEP is theoretically a great idea. It's not working. We will also look into that and see how we can improve the product to make it work. But on the Savings and Investments Union strategy, which I will be putting forward on the 19th of March, so 2 weeks from now, we will also be looking at other potential elements to bring people to invest. Not just the PEP, but we will also look into the PEP and see how we can improve it, because you're right. Theoretically, it's a great idea. It is really not working. We need to address those shortcomings and see if we can put it to work. The investment gap is really very important. And the point is that in Europe, we do have all the resources we would need, but at the same time, we have a huge investment gap. So basically, the Savings and Investments Union project is about making them come together, directing the savings to where they are needed, because first it will give people, citizens, savers, a higher return. So it will be way more appropriate for their own objectives. And at the same time, it will help companies to have the funding they need. And citizens will benefit again, because if companies are stronger, if they are healthier, they will create better jobs and pay better salaries to the people who save. So it's a very virtuous cycle that we can create here, but we need to make them, to get them to meet, which is currently what we don't have. And actually, pension funds are a critical part of that, because when you look at developed capital markets, it's not a coincidence. There is always a well-developed pension fund industry. That is the most efficient and effective way of bringing retail savers into the investment area. So it is something that we will all need to work on. That is not a Commission competence, so it's up to Member States to develop, but we will do our best to see if we can get there, get Member States to take the necessary measures to increase this part with Pillar 2 pensions. We will also be addressing those questions. And I found it very interesting, Lourenço, what you said about behavioral science, because it ties in very well with what I was saying about incentives. You need to understand how people react so that you can put the right incentives in place. And financial literacy is very important, but we need to teach people not only about the sophisticated issues, which may also be important, but for most people, it's about the simple things. As simple as, how do you manage your own family budget? How do you make sure that you do not engage in more expenses than the ones you can afford? And it may look strange to people who have been in the university and are have more knowledge, but a lot of people actually do not know how to make their money last during the month till they get the next paycheck. It is a basic competence that a lot of our citizens don't have. So when we talk about financial literacy, is not necessarily, at least, understanding very complicated financial products, is helping people to deal with finance, because finance is an integral part of our daily lives. We get paid, we have expenditures, we need to understand how we make those things go together. And obviously those who have less formal education, or have been in school for a lower number of years, who struggle with very hard lives, they need to have targeted solutions, so people helping them with the simple things. Tell me, how much money do you make a month? How much do you spend on food, on water, electricity? Helping people to plan their financial lives, first with the simple things, and then if they have a little extra money, then helping them to save that in the best possible way. But yes, absolutely, when we talk about financial literacy, we have to cater for the needs of all the different parts of society, including those who do not have money to save. But they are nevertheless very important. To those people, we also want to deliver better financial futures. So absolutely, we will take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And actually, before I open up the floor to some more discussion, I actually have a question. The two of you mentioned the pan-European pension product, and Commissioner mentioned that she and her team are going to take a look at that. I wonder whether you already have a possible path to a solution to make it better. Now, I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't. That's perfectly reasonable that you don't, because often part of policy making is first and foremost identifying what the problem is and then finding solutions. But I'm just curious, maybe you guys already have a solution? No?
One thing that comes to mind is to make it more flexible. In my country where I'm from, in Poland, you have a lot of different schemes like that, very similar, and the pan-European pension plan is a third one. So what people usually do is like they max out all of their previous limits, and that's like only for like very wealthy people who have high incomes, and that's something that group of people would be interested in. And the reason why that is happening, and that's something I experienced myself, is I first put my money into products when they have better tax incentives and higher flexibility. In this case, the tax incentive was basically the same, but the local pension product that we had even before PEPP, it allowed me to invest into more things, and the market was more mature. So I obviously went into this direction first, and then if I had any money on top, I would maybe get interested in PEPP, but that was out of the question in my case.
I think if I would have a concrete solution to that, I maybe would have already said it or put it forward in another forum. Just thinking of that, I think it's similar in Austria than it is in Poland, actually. So it's two layers here that, like, first of all, you have like the national level, and then that's on top here. And also it's not known very well. So there is a lot of communication about the EU and all the initiatives. Maybe there's sort of some room for improvement here as well, because I haven't heard it before, like before working or talking about this field sphere here. So maybe that would be one proposal.
Thank you very much. Yeah, communication is an issue, obviously, and I'm not just talking about PEP. That's we need to do better in communicating a lot of things. Agreed. On this, yes, making it known, but actually, I think the problem also lies on the competition with existing products at national level. So that is a bit trickier to address because we do not want to cannibalize existing products. We want to add. So finding the right balance to make it attractive, but not necessarily cannibalizing existing products. That is not the intention. Makes it challenging. It's about communication, and I think also probably about the distribution channels, so that, because that's part of it, making it known. It's not just about making publicity campaigns. It's about making it known when people go to a financial institution and say, I want to save, making sure that on the other side, people tell them, oh, we have a European product here. It's called PEP. That is the most effective communication exercise, but we need to understand why it is not happening and how can we address that challenge and make it better. But yes, of course, I think you have identified one of the main issues, and it will be addressed, rest assured.
Thank you. So I'm opening up the floor to not only the people that spoke in this block, but also everybody around the table. If you want to ask questions or expand on a theme that was touched on in this block, you're more than welcome to. Anybody?
Thank you very much. do you think you could expand on the competition of national product? Because I think some of our peers around this table have mentioned the fact that 34% of private household savings are in deposit and currency accounts. And so, for me, any proper retail savings products, such as the European pension product, I mean, if it offers the right incentive, isn't it better for a household to be putting its money there than just leaving it in, for example, overnight deposits?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I was talking about competing with existing savings products that would also direct retail money into investment. With deposits, yes, absolutely. We want to compete with deposits because, well, the banks do not need that much money in deposits. Obviously, they have no way of channeling that into lending because we do need more than lending. We need investment in equity. So taking part of that money out of the banks will not have a negative impact on the lending activity and can have a very positive impact on the investment in equity activity. So it is about not cannibalizing existing investment products, but it's actually about taking a part of the money which is in deposits, because deposits have a very, very low return. Actually, inflation eats up most of it, if not all. So people will end up with less money in the end, which is completely contrary to the objective of savings. So, yeah, cannibalizing deposits, if I can sort of put it like that, but not investment products. And that's where we want to find the right balance.
Thank you. We've got time for one more. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would just like to add that this idea of the incentives is very attractive, and in a lot of senses it makes sense. But we have known for a long time that humans are not rational, fully rational decision makers. So just going the incentive route and you can show to them that this is the best return and this has the best reward risk profile, a lot of times is not enough. And it requires a lot of cognitive effort to understand all of this information and even understand the incentives. So here is where I believe that it would be really important to go talk to people to understand what is happening and how do they make this kind of decision. This is behavioral science, this is psychology. And so that we can understand and behavioral map what they are actually thinking and when they are exposed to these products, so that we can actually act on the barriers to the behavior. And one idea that I feel is very, very interesting, and it has been shown in other countries that works, is this kind of automatic enrollment in pension funds that don't really requires cognitive effort, but it requires like an opt-out option where the effort is to opt out of it. It's a possibility. Of course, we would need to explore it more to know if it works, but that would also be interesting.
Thank you very much. Okay, and now we're going to move. The whole time we're going to be speaking here, we're speaking on the same subject, so there's always going to be an opportunity to add to your thoughts at a later point. So now we're going to move to block 2, which is broadly on savings and investing, and that will be first Koana, second Ulysse, and third Marcia. So, Koana.
Thank you very much. I'd love to thank Laura first for mentioning the Draghi report, because my topic is certainly on that, and it follows a few of the issues that were mentioned in the table before. So we know that Europe has a really strong culture on saving, but it doesn't really have on investing, as we mentioned. So the Draghi report really says that we have around 10 trillion euros in bank accounts, 0 to no interest, just basically sitting there, or we have businesses that struggle to find capital investment, and that end up in slow growth and essentially reallocation to countries like the United States. I would like, however, to come with a proposal, and it might seem quite ambitious, but it's just something I've been meditating on. So we currently have several European investment funds, but none of them, as we had mentioned before, is directly towards retail investors, or in other words, individual investors. I would like to come with something that I like to call the Citizen Investment Fund, CIF. It's something that would be a first-of-a-kind EU-backed up investment platform that allows citizens to invest directly into European growth. And it would be simple, completely digital, and accessible. Lorenzo has mentioned something about the behavior. I think it's really important that it is simple and accessible so people with low income would also be included, essentially. The idea is that investors can start with very little and bigger portfolios would be highly rewarded, essentially. These platforms would be the long-run way to channel private savings into green energy and infrastructure, tech and innovation, and EU bonds and stocks. I do see some limitations and challenges as well. And the first one that has as well been already mentioned is the competition with national schemes. We have countries that have their own and they might not feel comfortable on sharing this idea so much in their own countries. And I think it's important to outline to them the benefits of it in the long term, not only to raise capital for the European Union, but as well as a way of EU integration, and how good it would be if all the Europeans would be into only one platform, and so you almost cheerleader to your zone to growth. And also the problem that I vision is the regulatory and political buy-in. You have to change so many rules for this to happen. And one big issue that I see is the cross-border tax policies. You have completely different tax policies and tax income around all European states. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now,
Thank you very much, Joanna. I think I'd like to build on your idea, and I think my proposal is very similar to yours in the way that I propose an idea to channel private savings towards investments in the EU. You've mentioned Draghi's report, 800 billion additional yearly investments have to be made to support the decarbonization of our economy, to close the EU's innovation gap, and to reduce dependencies. On the other hand, 34% of savings, household savings, sit in currency and deposit accounts against 14% in the US. I think this difference can be explained by financial literacy, but also a lack of standardization among EU saving products. I'd like to propose an accessible single pan-European savings retail product. This product would be distributed by commercial banks. Its interest rate would be fixed by the European Commission on a quarterly basis. Funds could be withdrawn flexible, and the capital would be guaranteed up to a certain amount. An example at a national level of this would be France's Livret A scheme, which finances urban development. And I think today we can leverage on the EIB's existing asset management framework, which could then be used to redistribute funds and invest all the money from the savings products into private funds, who would be chosen criteria such as innovation and would meet EU's widest objectives. I can think of VCs, I can think of funds who support sustainable infrastructure projects, for example. I believe that this new standardized retail product could really bring a single market for financial service much closer to reality and could be incentivizing both for consumers who could have a higher return than on current really low bank deposits, but also channel growth towards innovative sectors who today lack those investments. Thank you.
thank you very much. And now for the last in this block, Marcia.
Marcia. Thank you very much. This has already been addressed, that most young people don't know how to save or invest. I certainly don't, so I'm very impressed with your interventions. I am learning so much already from all of you. But yeah, we're told that saving is important, that investing builds wealth, that we need to save, we need to invest, but no one actually teaches us how to do so. Schools don't cover it, and when we try to figure it out ourselves, we're met with confusing financial terms, high risk, and entry barriers that make investment feel out of reach. And then there's the reality we face. We face inflation, we face housing crisis. Young people, we struggle to set money aside to do all of this. And even when we try to save, inflation eats into it. We hear that investing is the way forward, but where do we even start? That's the question I ask myself all the time. What's safe? What's smart? Who can help me with all the investing ideas, or if I want to invest, how can I start? We need real solutions. Starting with financial literacy, of course, this has already been addressed. Schools should be teaching this as a life skill, just like we're taught maths or science. And this is a life skill, this is a basic knowledge, and we're left to figure out things on our own, and often when we try to do so, it's too late. But beyond education, and moving on to my policy recommendation, I think we need investment tools designed for young people specifically. That's why I believe that we should create a youth investment scheme at the European Union level, a program that makes investing simple, safe, and of course accessible. Just imagine being able to start investing with just 10 euros. I don't know if that's possible because guess what? I'm not financially literate. But with low risk and with financial guidance to do so that we actually understand what we're doing. The scheme could even have government or EU backup, offering matched contributions or tax benefits to encourage young people to start early. We talked earlier about incentives. This could be one of them. So in summary, we want financial freedom, not financial stress. And for that, we need the right tools, we need the right education, and a system that actually can help young people build wealth instead of just leaving us behind. That would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, following the same format, Commissioner, if you'd like to react.
Thank you very much, Idos, and thank you all for this new round of ideas. Just going back slightly on what Lorenzo said about the incentives and the barriers to behavior, it's about actually understanding which incentives will work, right? Understanding how people behave, so which kind of incentives would work. And incentives, I'm not just talking about tax incentives, incentives in general. So nudging people to actually do what is necessary. Auto-enrollment is a great idea because indeed it is passive. It takes an action to step out. But it is passive. Auto-enrollment is actually something that has proven to work in many situations. On the investment gap, the numbers are staggering, and it may not even be enough, the 800 billion. But indeed, if we look at the 10 trillion sitting in deposits, if we took 7 euros out of each 100, so we're just talking about 7 euros out of 100, it would already be more than the 800 billion that Draghi talks about. So this shows how deep is actually the pool of resources we have in the EU. We do have the money, which is not something we cannot say about most circumstances. We have the money, we have the resources. We just need to channel it where it should go. I like the ideas of having citizen investment funds, of having the possibility of citizens investing in EU projects rather than having their money just sitting there on bank deposits. But you are also right when you point to the need to make it, to harmonize many of the rules. That is actually one of the, that is the problem with the Capital Markets Union, is that in order to have a functional capital market, we need to bring down many of the barriers. Many of them are related to tax incentives, but a lot of them are related to law, for example. There is not one unified definition of a shareholder, or a share even, and what rights it implies across the EU. So we are talking about basic things, very much entrenched in national culture. It is very difficult to overcome that. That's why we talk about the 28th regime, so which would be something to harmonize a significant number of legislations across the EU, so that companies could opt for that regime rather than using the national one. But it is difficult to put in place. Obviously, it is difficult because we would have to decide which is best. And that, anyway, if it wasn't difficult, it would be done. But it's nevertheless necessary. On the idea of having accessible, simple, standardized products, I think that was the idea behind PEP, actually. I basically repeat what I said in my hearing. I like the idea of creating such products, but we need to fix the existing ones because we really run the risk of creating another one which will also not work. So let's see if we can fix what we have and put other ideas on the table. And yes, we could have more products directed to different ideas, to infrastructure, sustainable infrastructure. There's plenty that we need to finance in Europe, including defense, which has become an increasing priority and something that we should also look into, and maybe you can also give me your views as young people on how do you see the possibility to invest in defense. I think it would also be interesting in the current context. And on the life skill, you're absolutely right, Marcia. It is a life skill. The problem we have is that given that we haven't started this early enough, teachers themselves don't have these skills to teach to the kids. So we really need a very ambitious program to first teach the teachers so that they can then pass that knowledge to the children. But I absolutely agree. The earlier it starts, the better. And these are life skills. And one of my sons, I have 3 around your ages, once said, how come I finished school and no one ever told me how to fill a tax return? No one ever taught me that. And this is absolutely critical. So again, life skills relating, your relationship with finance are really important. We will need to address that on the financial literacy programs and to help you to make your decisions. And yes, if you start saving 10 euros, even if you start early enough, that should really help when you get to the retirement age, even if it's very little, and then you may start with 10 and then increase to 20, 50, and so on. Thank you.
Okay, before opening up the floor, I'm going to make a comment as well, because you touched on new products, and then we talked about defense. Personal experience. The problem is that somebody like me, I'm Lithuanian, so naturally I want to invest in defense products because we know about that. We've known about it for a long time. We've been screaming about it for a long time. Now, I'm relatively tech savvy. I use several online platforms, banks, payment providers, et cetera, et cetera. I've been looking for a defense-related ETF. I can't find it. I don't know if it exists or not, whether they just don't list it on their platforms, but I can't find it. So the private sector needs to step up as well. It can't be just the Commission creating new products, new innovative products. They need to, the market needs to respond, and for defense stuff, now's the time. Anyway, so that's my 2 bits. Who'd like to jump in?
Yeah, I think these are very, very good proposals. Just one question. How do you get your money out? Because this sounds an awful lot like crowdfunding, where you pool your assets together, and if you invest in a European project that is perhaps generating income, that might work, but if you invest in a road, it's quite difficult to get your money out. I mention it because I know this has been tried in the US before, where investors pool their assets to buy an apartment complex. They buy a percentage of the ground, but when it gets sold, it's very tough to get your money out. So should you take this proposal forward, then I advise you, it might be a bit of a big word, but I advise you to look at, how do investors get their money out, actually. Thank you.
Would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you very much. I think you raise a very valid point. But I would, from my understanding from this topic, which may be limited, of course, customers, household sensitivities to interest rates and to various exogenous factors, I think, leave the road to having a certain pool of deposit that would be still stay in this fund. And then if you have an implicit guarantee, I think, from the fund providers, so in my example of the EIB, I believe the chances, of funds being withdrawn, you could think of a bank run, for example, are very low in this case.
Thank you. I see a hand there.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention something. It builds a bit on what you said, Marcia, and about what you also said, Aidas, about you don't know where to invest in defense. And I think when we talk about how people have to be informed that this is a life skill, so they need the educational component to understand what they have to do, I would suggest not stopping at educational modules in school, but this is also something that could be very well explained and advised in the workplace. For young people, they should be made aware in the workplace of the investment schemes that are available to them because they earn a paycheck, and that could help and incentivize them to actually use a part of the paycheck to invest and save later on. So I think introducing information about this in the workplace could actually help with adding a communication channel to slowly working our way into informing more people about the problem.
Thank you. And we have time for one more, and that was Nicholas.
Thank you. I think we've had some great proposals about how the Commission or European level could come up with whatever products to channel private savings. But there's a lot of smart people here, but we're well aware it takes a long time. And that might take too long. So my main concern is about why should the Commission come up with those products? Why should it be on a European level? Can't we enable the private sector to come up with the right products, to set the right incentive? Usually those European products or state-sponsored products tend to have high fees and somewhat being harvested by intermediaries. That's not good for the consumer, that's not good for the issuer. So how can we enable the private sector to come up with those products, to be able to list a defense ETF instead of a green energy ETFs that didn't perform too well in Europe so far? And if we look at the US, for example, ETF fees are about a third of what they are in Europe because we have things like MiFID II that heavily increase compliance costs. So how can we set that incentive for the private sector to come up with new products, come up with new ideas, list them, and yes, they might fail. That's part of an investment. Those things might fail, but in efficient capital markets, things fail and other things outperform. So how can we pass this responsibility on to the private sector to have an incentive to act in line with retail interests?
Thank you very much. And unless you'd like to respond, we're going to move on to the next block because we're just on schedule. Of course.
Very quickly, Edis, on the exit strategies. That is important, but I think there are plenty of ways to do that. You don't necessarily have to have a stake, equity-like, on products. You can simply buy a bond to finance a specific project, and that would allow for that to be a secondary market, which could and should be efficient, so that people could exit if they wanted to. If the income is interesting, possibly people will remain for the whole, it would typically be a long-term kind of bond issuance, but there should be a secondary market to allow people to exit, because a lot of things happens in life, and you should really give people the possibility to take their money out if and when they need it. So I think there are ways of doing that, and having equity may be trickier, but if you think about bonds, which is actually a way that we do, but linked to a specific project and allowing retail investors to access, so that people will also develop a culture of investing. Because if it is, even if it's a loan, but if it's associated to a specific project, it helps nudging behaviors again and trying to give people the sense that they are linked and benefiting from something. On the private sector, yes, I think the private sector really needs competition, because costs are too high, because there is not enough transparency and competition. And the digital world can be very useful in bringing about that competition. I think that's what we need. And yes, I absolutely trust the private sector to help us on the solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. And now moving on to Block 3, which is broadly on financial literacy, and especially because it was just brought up, I do know what I want, it's just I'm not finding it. So Block 3 will be Martina, Ignace, and Alisa. Martina will be first.
Thank you very much. I come from a country where both purchasing power parity...
I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you could...
Yes, thank you very much. I come from a country where both purchasing power parity and financial literacy remains low compared to its neighbors. Misleading advertisements and easy access to microloans create a false illusion of financial flexibility, but many borrowers fail to grasp the long-term consequences of these financial commitments as they regularly overspend. Moreover, hidden fees and simple fact that it costs money to borrow some often leads to vicious cycle of debt that are difficult to escape, especially for youth in a reality where unpaid internships remain far too common. At the same time, youth across Europe are losing trust in pension schemes. Many of us see how aging populations and economic uncertainty are straining public pension systems, and yet financial education about long-term savings remain insufficient. In Slovakia, for example, young people often do not understand how different pension pillars work, leaving them unprepared for financial security later in life. And without proper guidance, many avoid saving altogether, which is a decision with severe long-term consequences. With this in mind, I would like to ask if the Commission does see a case for a stricter regulation on exploitative microloan advertisement, and how can we ensure that financial literacy, such as proper budgeting or explanation of pension schemes, is prioritized to empower young people to plan for their future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And our next presenter is Ignas Plunksnes.
Thank you very much. It goes without saying that all of us want a stable life, but unfortunately in my day-to-day, I often hear that people are not secure about their financial stability. So first we must identify the problem. How so? One of the biggest reasons is most likely the abundance of information. As an average person scrolling on the internet and trying to find information, there's just a lot of it. It's overwhelming. In the mix, there's also a lot of untrustworthy or sometimes even harmful information. So in the end, people are discouraged from maximizing their potential savings, and sometimes they even lose money because they get into get-rich-quick schemes. Another big reason is the lack of foundational education. Now, on one hand, it's the responsibility of our parents to lead us, to guide us for the world ahead, but they may be facing the same challenges as us. And as for schools, in Lithuania at least, the economic knowledge, financial knowledge that is provided is very, very surface level. It is often on the overworked teachers to provide us with extra material for this. So I get people coming up to me and asking, like, why should I save from the age of 18 for retirement? That's ridiculous. I'll just save later and I'll live off my pension. Well, I ask, do you know how the pension system works? Will there be someone financing the pension system in the future? So my proposal is that the EU sits down, consolidates all of the information and provides it in a clear way. As a small business owner, I already use a tool for international trade and imports, exports. It is called access to markets. Why not provide something for citizens to have a foundation of finance and savings? Because the core material of finance and savings is universal. Only there are slight differences from country to country, like pension funds and tax systems. You could also provide credible sources for further reading. All in all, this would not only provide a clear curriculum for the teachers, for the national governments to implement in the education system, but it would also enable any one of us, any age to do research on our own and do it in a efficient and confident manner.
Thank you very much. And our last, Alisa.
It was mentioned today multiple times that financial literacy is a crucial life skill, and however, while some parents may pass down their financial knowledge to their children, many people learning it much later in life, often through trials and errors. So why should we start with schools? I think that if personal finance becomes as fundamental as math or languages in schools' curriculum, it would allow children and give them equal opportunities to develop smart financial habits. We all learned how to calculate percentages at school, but what if at the same time we could learn how to calculate the impact of inflation on our savings just in a simple manner? So what Commissioner addressed before, I think the school's role is to start with basic, simple concepts, then just to prepare children to discover later on more sophisticated topics. At the same time, we need to rethink how we teach financial literacy. It is not a surprise that new generations learn differently. They prefer hands-on, interactive approaches. Their attention span is much shorter, and the digital technologies can bridge this gap. For example, gamification can transform complex financial concepts into something very simple and fun. And these tools already exist. They just need to become a standard part of the curriculum. The more stakeholders we involve in this process, the better. This could be parents involved in this gamified process, as well as finfluencers. It is a new term which stands for financial influencers, because many young people turn to social media for advice, and they are becoming a trusted source of information. Nevertheless, the recommendations they provide still needs to be verified, and I see it as a perfect opportunity for schools to invite those finfluencers to schools to share their knowledge and to collaborate to create educational content that is both reliable and at the same time speaks the language of young people. So combining efforts of schools, families, and digital creators would allow to make financial literacy not just as a subject, but to integrate it into our everyday life.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you all for your comments and your suggestions on this, on how the Commission can act. I will be presenting later this year a financial literacy strategy that is also part of my mission letter, and we'll have to take all that into account. And actually, as with most of the topics we are discussing here today, this has to be a collective effort. We really need every stakeholder to engage and participate. Financial literacy is a clear example. There are many, many initiatives from the civil society out there, from professional organizations, from ONGs, from all sorts of stakeholders. They have initiatives on financial literacy. They provide materials. There are games to make it more appealing for children to learn. Indeed, I think school is very important. That will take a very long time because we would be starting with children, but don't underestimate the power of children to educate their parents. If children learn in school, they will transmit that information and that knowledge to their parents. It happened with many other things like recycling, for example. My generation did not learn how to recycle. My children did. So they were the ones pushing me to separate paper from plastic, from glass. That push came from my children because in school they were being taught. And that does happen. So it's just not parents to children. It can also go the other way. And it is very positive for all. We need to address the issue of teachers. We need to support teachers, give them not just the information, but the knowledge themselves. So again, it will take lots of different measures put in place by many different stakeholders. It has to be a collective effort that starts with one fundamental thing: awareness that this is really necessary. People need to be better informed about financial issues. It is not something that is not important. It is incredibly important for all of us on our daily lives, whether you're poor or you're rich. If you are poor, it's even more important because money will mean more to you. So we really need to put all our efforts together, and your suggestions will obviously be taken into account when designing the strategy on how the difficulty in finding the right information. There is an overload of information. I'd argue that even on the legislation to protect investors, we possibly give them too much information, and too much information equates to no information because people will just not read it and will not understand it. So it's finding the right level, the right balance of how much you need, how much information you need to give, and making sure that it is intelligible for people. Otherwise, there is no point in giving them, I think, lots of paper for them to read and sign, because they will just sign, they won't even read. On the finfluencers, that is actually an interesting idea. I just heard this morning on the news that the Central Bank of Portugal, my own country, is actually planning to launch later this year an AI tool to sort of try to understand, to see who is actually being a finfluencer and in social media, because there's a lot of people out there trying to do marketing of things that either they don't understand or they participate in scams. So they are important, but they also need to be properly monitored so that they do not promote the sale of the wrong kind of products. Some because they don't know, some others with worse intentions than those. But yes, they are important. We need to reach people using the channels that they find most interesting. But very good ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Before opening up the floor to one or two interventions, I want to ask a question. I'm not the youngest person in the room here. But when I was a kid, we did have financial literacy classes in the sense that we had home economics, right? And I remember one of the gamified things that we needed to do, this was prior to the internet and prior to computers, by the way. We had to have a fantasy portfolio. And every day when we came into home ec class, you open up newspaper. Was this thing, right? It's paper and it has information in it. So we would open up to the stock pages and check our stocks, our fantasy stocks, against reality, right? Not instant, obviously, but against reality. And for that semester in school, we could either make or lose fantasy money. And we learned about stocks. We learned about bonds. Don't they do that in school anymore? I mean, whatever happened to that? Okay, go ahead, Ignay.
Yeah, I can contribute on this. My teacher, shout out to my high school economics teacher, my teacher was excellent on this, and she, for a semester, did exactly the same thing, except we had our phones. We could trade on a paper account. But unfortunately, it's not in the curriculum. You just get a book and you read, oh, budgeting, you set aside this expense for food, this for rent. But it's not enough, and it's often on the teachers. But not all teachers understand it, and yeah, basically it.
Thank you for clearing that up for me.
When I was in high school, we had a class on entrepreneurship. So there were like basics of how to start your small business, also how to do taxes. That's something we actually had, which is kind of paradoxical because we learned how to do those paper taxes, which no one does anymore. And but something that really bugged me about that class specifically is that it only focused on like small entrepreneurship, single person business. And most of us are not going to be entrepreneurs. And those people, like, if you knew what you want to do and it's like part of a big company or public sector, you just did nothing in those classes if you weren't interested in being an entrepreneur yourself.
If I may intervene one more time, yes, I wanted to highlight that what we provide in schools, it needs to be like as a skill, not as knowledge as such. Because, for example, we learned about taxes and we learned about these interest rates and like tax rates, but financial world is so agile and so fast developed that once you finish the schools, probably these tax rates will not longer be applicable. So instead of focusing on real-time information and what is relevant today, we need to make it as a skill. So focusing on how to budget, how to even fill in the reports, like you mentioned, it was on the paper, now it's digital. So it's important to bring in and explain the concept, not give the exact science and exact theory.
Thank you. And one last intervention, and we're moving on to the next topic.
Thank you. I wanted to talk about, you guys were talking about how children can teach their parents. And I was reading an article recently about religious institutions and how they teach children the practice of tithing. And I think it's so interesting. They would bring them to camps, summer camps. They would give them 10 candies, and there would be, you have 10 candies, but you don't really, because one is tithing. And the sort of benefit they get from it is their blessings. So they teach them from such a young age that that's the practice, that when they come to the labor force, it's automatically, they pay their taxes and they pay their tithing. So I think we were talking about so many ideas of sophisticated ideas, but it really starts with candies. It's simple as that. It's teaching in kindergarten, it's teaching in middle school with candies in a sort of very simple way.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to move to our second topic of the day. These are all interrelated, obviously, so we're probably going to be touching on some of the same things in this as well. So topic 2 is digital finance and innovation, and here we only have one block of people. So this will be Giuseppe Siciliano, Ioana, and Nicholas. So, Giuseppe.
Thank you, Aidas. Thank you, Commissioner, for the opportunity to speak today. Europe has made progress in financial integration, but major obstacles remain, such as fragmented banking system and a payments market that's widely dominated by non-EU companies. These issues weaken our edge and financial sovereignty, and in these particular times expose us to external pressures. First, the lack of a true banking union has a direct consequence on our everyday lives. Businesses and individuals that want to operate across borders face barriers when doing so. Financial services remain tied to national markets, and despite SEPA, IBAN discrimination still persists, and surprisingly is often perpetrated by public institutions. A single portable EU IBAN could ensure that opening and using a bank account is seamless across the Union. However, this alone is not enough. A unified banking system is crucial for Europe's competitiveness, as stressed by Mario Draghi and many others for over a decade now. Completing the banking union would foster competition, reduce costs, and allow European companies to grow without artificial financial barriers. Second, Europe's payment system is in the hands of a few US-based companies. This dependency limits our ability to innovate. If we want a financial system that is independent, secure, and inclusive, we must take the lead in digital innovation. That means, for example, merging the EU digital wallet and the ECB proposed Digital Europe into a single tool, providing both secure identity verification and instant low-cost transactions. These solutions should not replace the private sector, of course, as many of you mentioned today, but must be developed in partnership with European banks, fintechs, and payments providers to ensure competitiveness, inclusion, and scalability. Europe cannot afford to lag behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next will be Ioana.
So I'm actually going to jump a bit off of what Giuseppe just mentioned. I've said initially that I'm an international student, which means I have had bank accounts in 3 different countries and multiple bank accounts with different banks in my home country, which led me to look into the situation in Europe. There's millions of citizens who live in a member state that is not the member state where they were born, hundreds of thousands of students who go on Erasmus programs every year, EU citizens who have just bank accounts outside of their country or multiple bank accounts with different banks in their home country. So my idea was to create an EU unified banking app where we would be able to see all of our solds from all of our accounts in one place. We'll be able to make transfers with other citizens who have the same banking app and have them fast and seamless. But there we would also have a budgeting function, for example, which will allow us to see how much money we actually have in total, how we're spending it, where it should go. We can even have information on what investment schemes are available to us, where we can save, how we can use our funds to create more wealth, and even get information on how we should combat fraud or what the banking regulations of our state are. This can be done through either a gamified option or a chatbot, but this would basically create an efficient process of managing our finances and seeing where our money is, but also make it so that we would go into financial literacy and digitalization at the same time. There's obviously limitations when it comes to cooperation of banks, but this app would be more of an aggregator rather than a competitor to the banking apps that already exist. And it would be a step to better finance management, more centralized and efficient processes, and also digital innovation in financial services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and let me know how one can invest in the creation of that app, because it sounds like a good product. And our last will be Nicholas.
Thank you. I would also shortly go off topic, just because before I moved to London, I lived in Singapore for a while, and my standard bank account had 19 currencies. To open a US dollar trading account with my back then German bank took 6 months of a client relationship. What's the reason for that? There's no competition, and the awareness is missing. But to my main topic, the financial world is undergoing a shift, and that shift is powered by innovation and technology. If we look at the blockchain and tokenization of assets in general, there's not a trend that's reshaping infrastructure that we're using for decades now. We've seen Europe somewhat losing global relevance since the financial crisis, and Brexit, if we talk about issuing equity access, distribution of financial assets. The blockchain is a decentralized ledger that boosts transparency, accessibility, and then the tokenization of traditional assets, if it's real world, equity assets, bonds, boosts liquidity, widens the access, inclusivity of financial markets. And Europe has a chance to invest into the future, to lead something that is certainly coming, that other global players maybe missed out on over the recent years. And we as Europe probably can't compete on the current infrastructure. That's something that should have happened a while ago, but we have the chance to invest into the future. At the same time, we've also regulated it when it's not yet fully relevant. We have things like the digital finance strategy that is now about 5 years old and maybe not 100% suitable anymore. So how do we as Europe want to position, given that decline that we had over the last 15, 20 years, and how do we want to use technology to become more relevant as a financial hub in this world again?
Thank you very much. Commissioner.
Thank you. Very interesting topics on the IBAN discrimination. It exists indeed. I mean, I myself was confronted with the fact I moved from my home country here to realize I'm still using my domestic bank account, but it's only because I could find a house with all the utilities included. Otherwise, I would have had to open an account here. And trust me, for a politically exposed person, it is not something you wish to go through. So I'll avoid it as much as I can, even if eventually I will have to go through that. But yes, we need to address it makes no sense that we do not have an IBAN with the same number of digits across the EU. It just makes no sense. So we need to address that. It's the seemingly small things that make citizens' lives too difficult. So we should and we will address that. It is true that the payment landscape is US dominated, but we can and we will do things about that. The digital euro is obviously one of the projects. There are lots of projects from the private sector, some of them purely national based, but some others already engaging into interoperability with other member states, lots of initiatives. We should work in a way that makes sure that the public initiatives such as the digital euro do not crowd out the private initiatives already out there. It's about making them all be available within the same space, allowing for this competition for innovation to continue to be there, because it is very important. On the aggregator, I think that some of these things already exist. The payment, the PSR, Payment Services Regulation, is already out there allowing for the aggregation on information on bank accounts, but FIDA, which is coming, will allow also for the access of way broader information. And with that, those aggregators will come. And actually, some of them already exist, allowing you to choose for a better insurance or to change your pension savings to where they can actually be put with a higher return. So those ideas are there. Aggregating at EU level will require us to lower the barriers. But when it comes to legislative initiatives, we are already there, trying to make that happen and creating that room for the private sector to come in and innovate. FinTech is a great space for that. I've been also talking to some of them, listening to their ideas, and I think the potential is huge. Obviously, when we look at tokenization of assets, blockchain technology, all of that will transform the payment landscape. We've just announced that we will be moving to the settlement on T+1, so the settlement on the following business day. But actually, we are talking about instant payments more and more. So by the time we have T+1 in place, probably instant payments will be dominating the scene anyway. Anyway, T+1 is the maximum time that it can take. It's not the minimum. Instant payments will continue to be allowed, obviously. But just to say that this is really moving very, very fast. And public entities are also looking into that, paying a lot of attention and trying to make the most out of it. I think that technology does allow us, give us the opportunity to close the gap that we currently have. We need to focus very significantly, and we will need everyone's support on that, on bringing down the barriers. Because for this to be successful, we need scale. We need to think in EU terms, not national terms. It's not about us competing against each other. It's about us all together competing with others outside of Europe. That requires a lot of political will, a lot of political courage, a lot of vested interest to be tackled head-on. We will need your support. The young generation is very important to help us push for that. All the things that you said, this is true, the digital strategy, 5 years old, it's just too old. We need also, as we said before, to be agile, to do better, to be efficient. The ideas are going in the right direction. We need your support also in your member states to help them make them work. So be vocal, push for it. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I open up the floor to comments or explanations or...
I would like to comment on that. I think we don't realize in Europe how big of a problem that really is until we step out a little bit. And it's good to look at the United States and brag about how our payments are faster. But if you go in another direction, like India, China, it seems like we're really lagging behind. And it's scary that this conversation is only happening now. It's easy to say that like China can unify this because it's like a very like one country. Yeah. But in other places, like in India, for example, there was a big public push for one payment system. And I just saw it myself, how it works last month when I was there. And I was a bit ashamed that we don't have that. It's way more accessible than whatever we have. And the fees are so low. I know that that happened in Europe with credit cards and debit cards through regulation. But for small businesses there, the fees are zero. That's just something that the government provides as a service. That really inspired me to like rethink how we think about payments. Up until then, I really thought that like we're doing fine, but there's so much more than we can do. Bringing that technology to really all of people. And it's really nice to look to other places like China, like India, like Africa, to also see that accessibility aspect of all of it. It's not only nice to have the apps, but to make them so simple that anyone can use them.
Thank you very much for bringing this accessibility point. I think it like reaches out to my question I was having regarding Iona's proposal. I think the idea of an EU digital finance app is great, but how do you expect EU citizens to adopt it? What incentives maybe you have in mind, or maybe the Commissioner with the PSR and the FIDA Act?
Yes, I have a similar concern that I would like to raise, because these unified tools, they propose many great opportunities and benefits, but at the same time, they also require more transparency, and I guess that some citizens might be resilient because they will need to share all their bank accounts they have. And I know that, for example, in my country, in Latvia, still many people believe that if they hold money in different bank accounts, the State Revenue Service will never know about that, which is ridiculous and again links to the financial awareness. But that is a major risk, yes, how we explain those benefits and how we like provide this opportunity to people, at the same time not forcing from them and not requiring from them more information that is needed.
Thank you. Did you want to respond, Commissioner, or do we go to one more comment? Okay.
Mine was more of a response to your question, Ulysse. So what I had in mind, and this is also really regarding what you said, that this is also something that could come from the private sector. I think if it's maybe commissioned or supported through the public sector, then it would become universal tool that could be used as an additional service, not necessarily seen as a competitor, but if it is promoted as an initiative for EU citizens, then it could also become more popular, also through financial literacy programs, for example. But obviously this would have to be constructed so it is not fully in competitiveness with other initiatives. I'm fully aware of that. But if it's commissioned by the public sector, then maybe it could be seen as an EU initiative to make the management of finances and bank accounts more efficient.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very quickly on this point of the apps, because I think this is really important. First, both the payment services regulation as the FIDA, as it is proposed now, we are still initiating trilogues, so this is just a Commission proposal. We'll have to see what comes out after the negotiation with Council and Parliament. But the idea is that people will share data on a completely voluntary basis. So if people don't want to share, they won't. This is very important because people own those data. And we need to make sure that if they do not want to share, they won't. Of course, we should communicate and explain the benefits of sharing the data, what they can gain from it, and obviously guarantee that they will not be misused, that they will be protected enough. But it always puzzles me why people are so reluctant to share some information for financial purposes, for example, but yet on social media they share unbelievable intimate things. So maybe it's something for you who study behavioral science to understand why do people share things that clearly do not benefit them and are so reluctant in sharing others that would actually help them. But again, it's in the domain of behavioral science, clearly not my area, but obviously, yes, it has to be transparent, and that is why we need regulation. There is always a very difficult balance, and then going back to what you said before, Nicholas, on when is the right time to regulate? What is the right level of regulation? Because we want regulation to give guidance, framing, stability, but not to be an impediment to innovation. And that right balance is not necessarily easy to achieve. Trust, we are doing our best, but also we want to have your feedback, and we are willing to adjust and correct, because this is also a learning process when we talk about very innovative ideas. But it's often the market that wants us to give some sort of framing so that they know they're going in the right direction. And it is all happening very, very quickly. There is a world of opportunities, and I think that the ones who can benefit the most are actually citizens. So one of the incentives, I would say, is about providing information, giving assurance, and trying to explain to people that this is actually to their benefit, having the possibility. And you were saying about a public initiative. Honestly, I prefer this to be private sector initiatives with the right regulatory framing, because I think they are better equipped to design the right solutions, and about giving people the possibility to really choose the best. This is about competition as well, because if you go there and you say, if you have an app that tells you you should take out your insurance package from this insurance company and put it into another, that creates competition. That will force insurance companies to do better, to provide better services at lower cost. So it incentivizes competition, and that is a very good thing, because competition will be good for the users. And in the end, it's all about the citizens and giving them better services, more affordable, and giving them what they really need. So yes, it is about competition, but it is a very good thing that we are promoting that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now moving on to topic 3, where we also have one block that is about sustainable finance. Here we'll have Hawa, Luc, and Mila as our presenters. And we're going to start with Hawa.
Thank you. So, with rising employment rates among young people in Europe. How is the EU Commission planning to promote sustainable financing models that not only address short-term economic relief, but also empower youth with long-term employment opportunities, especially in sectors linked to the green and digital transition? As we know, being unemployed is not a simple thing. It's caused by many things. For example, in Europe, we have lots of immigrants that have moved from out of EU, so they're automatically many times in a social economy state that is unfair to them. They don't get job easily. They are in jobs that are minimum wages, and they also sometimes suffer from integrating into the society. But also I want to point out that young people, when they're unemployed, they might end up taking expensive loans, so they end up having debts. And also talking about money or finances, saving is very uncomfortable for them for reasons. For example, maybe in the family they don't talk about finances, or the parents don't know about them. But also small wages that we have around in Europe, like cost of living is expensive. And also how, when they have the chance to start investing and saving, how can they find the ways of information about green and digital transition? And also when you're unemployed, the amount of stress and also mental health issues that you get from it, when you suffer from these things, you don't think about money or savings. So my conclusion is that I would love that we would have like an EU program. We are actually talking about this in Finland. So it's for lower income families. It's like a startup money for the kids. So let's say a new family gets a newborn baby. So they get like, let's say 30,000 money. So that money they can spend for investing for the kids' future, and then a huge EU project for teachers to give them tools to teach about finance literacy, like that was said before, but also like a culture of saving money and finance literacy. And then when it comes to the job market, which is very important, because if you don't have money, you can't do anything. Trust me, I know it right now. Like an anonymous recording that doesn't show your name, your gender, so that you have an equal job opportunity, but also the culture of pushing sustainable finance. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Luc.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to switch topics just a little bit and move to the omnibus proposal that the Commission put out last week. My question is quite simple. I mean, the omnibus proposal is this big simplification package that tries to alleviate regulatory burden on companies. And my question is, given your aspiration, given Europe's aspiration to become the leader in sustainable finance, how do you sort of justify the amendments in the omnibus proposal, particularly the relaxation of reporting requirements under the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSDDD, the taxonomy? I mean, I won't go into all of the details and use jargon. That's not irrelevant here. But I read the supplement to the omnibus proposals. And the Commission gives these cost-saving estimates, which rests on a whole bunch of assumptions, naturally. But it's a pure cost analysis. There's no cost-benefit analysis. There was no impact assessment even. So I wonder if you could address this narrative that some say that the Commission is essentially saying, well, you can either have proper sustainability reporting and due diligence or competitiveness. There's no way to do both. And then to my policy recommendation, and this is not a new one, it's trying to achieve supervisory convergence, because when issuers see Europe, they see one union. They don't see 27 member states, they see one continent. And so for that, I was hoping you would push for more powers to ESMA and EBA, and also increase funding, because usually when the Commission sends a request for RTS's guidelines, they need to prioritize these, and they don't have the manpower to solve these. And I don't think the rules are complicated, but they're not very burdensome. It's the lack of guidelines, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Mila.
Thank you. Commissioner, you invited us here today to discuss the future of finance. And as a representative for that future generation, I am worried. Climate change and biodiversity loss are systemic risks, threatening multiple sectors and, towards 2050, threatening the financial stability of the EU. Furthermore, global instability stretches the economy even further. Can we use this new European common in a fruitful way? I therefore have two main points to address. First, I believe companies must integrate sustainability due diligence and risk management into their business models. Identifying and managing negative impacts on human rights and nature is critical to protect natural resources and supply chains and ensuring a resilient economy. However, clearer EU guidance is urgently needed. The CSDDD proposal, which limits due diligence to Tier 1, risks leaving smaller companies exposed. In line with the risk-based approach and proportionality principle, I urge you to reconsider it. If the proposal does move forward, I suggest simplified EU guidelines for out-of-scope companies. Second, large amount of capital needs to be catalyzed towards sustainable activities. Preventing greenwashing and securing investor and consumer trust is key. I believe this requires clearer SFDR financial product categorizations and better alignment with the definition of sustainability within the EU taxonomy. My question is, how do we ensure financing the transition for brown sectors while also mitigating the risks of greenwashing? My final hope is that the future of sustainable finance will not just be green, but also responsible, risk-aware, and built to last longer than just one generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Very many different issues to address, some of them not directly related to my portfolio, but I will still do my best to address them and trying to put them into the light of the financial sector and how the financial sector can contribute. On the unemployment for young people, that is obviously a problem. Unemployment is always a very stressful situation, whether for young people or for older people, because it is the way we integrate into society. And being unemployed is not only about not having the money, is not having a lot more opportunities associated. So it is really a major issue. But employment opportunities come with economic growth. So the role of the financial sector here, and actually the ultimate goal of the Savings and Investments Union, is to have a functional financial market in the EU, channeling, as we were talking about, channeling the savings into the investment, because that allows companies to grow. That allows for innovation. That allows for companies to be able to go through the transition, and that I'll go into that, to go through the transition in a more efficient way, to be stronger, better capitalized, and that will allow them to create not only more jobs, but better jobs with better salaries, and that is very important. And obviously, we will also need to provide that not only for our own European-born citizens, but also for those immigrants that come to us in search of a better life. And we need that workforce as well. So it is in our best interest to accept those people, to integrate them into our societies, to give them the right opportunities, and to give them the treatment that every single human being deserves. And we are made up of that diversity. So when we think about having better companies, when I talk about better jobs, I'm also talking about better jobs for those people, the immigrants. Again, it's for those who were born in the EU, but also those who were born elsewhere and who came here in search of a better life. It is good for them. It is good for us. We need to manage that appropriately because it is in everyone's best interest. But having a functional financial market, making sure that we are channeling the resources to where they can be most productive, will create the necessary opportunities to address the issues that you were referring to. And obviously, when you talk about these ideas for low-income families and the ideas to nudge, again, behavior, that idea of giving money when a new child is born, I think that in Germany, the new chancellor during the campaign also mentioned the idea of giving every 6-year-old a certain amount that would be invested. That is very important because that will actually show those families how, even if a relatively low amount of money can indeed be invested in a way that when that child comes to age, when it becomes a grown-up, will have some money there. And that helps. That is the kind of good example. We can have EU initiatives, obviously, but we should also learn from these national initiatives. There is no conflict between these national initiatives and the EU initiatives, as long as they are done in a way that they do not create additional barriers. It is good, so we can have dynamic local markets and an integrated EU market. The two ideas are not contradictory. On the contrary, they can reinforce each other. So all these local initiatives, national initiatives are most welcome, and obviously creating equal opportunities to find jobs is very important. Discrimination is more than anything a question, or addressing discrimination is giving people the right education. Educated, knowledgeable people do not discriminate because they know that simply it is not smart. It is not intelligent. So as many of the problems we have, we need to address them with proper education and showing people that if you are intelligent, you will not discriminate. The two things are quite incompatible. On the omnibus, how do we justify? No, I have to be brief. I tried to explain why we came to, when we did the press conference, why we came to these proposals, and yet most of them are still proposals because they will need to go through the discussion with Parliament and Council. We are, as I think that's how we started this conversation, facing challenging times. And when times change, priorities change. I'm not saying that sustainability is no longer a priority. What I'm saying is the balance will have to be different from the one we had thus far. And it is about competitiveness has become the dominant topic because we feel that if we do not deliver on economic growth, we will not be able to deliver on sustainability either. In order to preserve our social model, in order to preserve the sustainability objectives, we need to deliver on economic growth. Let's be honest. The problem is not just about regulation. I wish it was that easy to fix. It goes way deeper than that. But we have to admit that regulation also brings problems, unintended consequences, because there was a lot of unsustainability in particular. There was a lot of legislation being put forward in a very short period of time. That led to inconsistencies, to overlaps, maybe to requiring information that turns out not to be fit for purpose. So we are trying to address that. And to those who say that descoping 80% of the corporate sector is too much, I said, and I stick by that, and I continue to believe that, I do not believe that 80% will no longer report. Because many of those companies are part of the value chains of the companies still in scope. So they will have to report because they are on the value chain and they need to feed that information to the bigger companies. Many others, even if they are not part of the value chain of a big company, they will do so anyway because they have started reporting. They use that as a strategic positioning decision. So our intention was, first, for those who will still want to report, they will have a simple format. So it is about making sure that they report on what is really needed and fit for purpose. That will also help investors, because if they have, as we discussed before on other topics, too much information can actually be equivalent to no information. So we need to give the right amount of information to be accessible, easy to interpret. I am convinced that most of our companies will continue to report. Not all. Some will find it is not necessary, but I don't think that probably that will have that negative impact. But we also need to signal to companies that we are listening to them, that we listen to their concerns. They feel that they are overburdened. And sustainability is a bit of the final straw. You know, it comes on top of a lot of regulation. And the final straw is often not the worst one, but it is the final straw. So that's where people get focused on, and we need to address that. We need to make sure, in order to anchor our sustainability objectives, we have to make this compliance manageable and not too burdensome. Otherwise, the backlash can be just too bad. It's finding, again, the right balance and recognizing that now we need to focus seriously on competitiveness. And we want to prevent the risks of greenwashing. That is why we want to preserve the core of the Green Deal and the sustainability framework. And that is the double materiality. As you said rightly, the risks today, what are the financial risks today, well, is not the same as the financial risks in the future. That's why double materiality considers the need to report on impacts, because impacts today become risks in the future. And that dominant feature has been preserved. That is still there on the framework. So we will see, and again, this is what we are proposing now. We will see the impact of this. We will have to review, we'll have to assess the result, but I am convinced that we managed to find a balanced solution, considering that on the one side we had people saying just drop it all together, and on the other side we had people saying don't touch anything. And we need to find the right balance between the two. On the brown companies, the greenwashing, it is a concern. That is why we want compliance to be, reporting to be meaningful, because if it's not meaningful, you can have a lot of reporting and greenwashing hiding in it. But we also need to finance those companies in transition. That is why the partial alignment on taxonomy is important, because not every company is green. Actually, the bulk of our corporate sector is not there, but we need to get them funds in order for them to transition to be more sustainable. So partial alignment will give important information to say, well, this company is on its way to becoming green, and how it is on that journey. And that information to investors will actually help. So I believe that we have found the right balance, considering the different positioning we were getting from stakeholders, and we did listen to stakeholders, to all stakeholders on this. The lack of an impact assessment was due to the urgency to move forward. There is no impact assessment, but there is a working paper with a lot of information that you can access on our website, particularly on the topics under my responsibility directive, which is CSRD and taxonomy. There's a working paper with a lot of information. It is not an impact assessment, but I think it gives a lot of information that can also make investors and those concerned with sustainability more comfortable and potentially, hopefully, understanding better where we come from and why we think that this is a balanced solution. And sorry for taking so long.
Thank you very much. We have a tiny bit of time for one or two interventions before I'm going to ask the Commissioner for her closing remarks and wrapping everything up. So who would like to intervene? I see two people right away. So maybe Mila first, since you...
Yeah, thank you. I know the taxonomy and CSRD is mostly under your commission, but as I said in my earlier speech, that the CSDDD is also a tool to mitigate risks, both for the company but also for the financial stability in the EU. So it was also just to hear a bit more on your views on how do we then mitigate those risks that will arrive in the future that could also be mitigated by some of the companies. And finally, also with the proposed changes to the CSRD and the taxonomy, how will you ensure data quality and comparability for investors and consumers regarding sustainability risks? Thank you.
Thank you, and I would just like to highlight one point. We talked about, or we heard about a cost-benefit analysis for non-reporting obligations. I think there's a fundamental shift in mindset needed to a certain degree. We need to make this cost-benefit analysis before we impose those reporting obligations onto a company. I don't think any professional company has an interest in greenwashing or something comparable, because that's an immense risk to the company and the business model. That's legal uncertainty, and companies hate regulatory and legal uncertainty. They act relatively rational. So we need to come back to what the Commissioner also earlier said. We need to have incentives. If you have the right incentives, you have the right outcomes. We need to help those companies that might feel like, oh, I need to hide something, I need to greenwash something. They don't want to do that. They need the right incentive to be honest and transparent on that reporting. And I've heard examples of a sustainability report costing about 100,000 per download. That's not in scale. People, retail investors, are maybe not interested in reading that, and that's okay. So we need to target that to the investors that are interested in reading that, have the right incentive to make this transition, and that needs to be funded. So I think we need to have a shift in mindset there, back to incentives rather than imposing regulation, because it's nice and good to have transparency to everyone. But first of all, we need the underlying incentives to fund that transparency.
Thank you. Commissioner, if you'd like to respond or comment on that, and then I'm going to ask you to go into your ending comments or your wrap-up.
Thank you very much. I'm conscious of time. Just to finish the comments on this particular topics, yes, it's about finding the right balance, getting the right amount of information, and we realize that the cost, the burden imposed, especially on SMEs, is very, very significant and disproportionate. And disproportionality on regulation is an issue that we need to address. And again, we are trying to get it right. We review regularly our own regulation, so we will continue to review. We will continue to keep an eye on that. I'm convinced that we found the right balance, and we are addressing concerns coming from different stakeholders, which we felt we needed to address, because we do not want we want our companies to see that sustainability is a strategic decision. I continue to believe that sustainability is a competitive advantage going forward. But we need to worry not just about the medium to long term. We need to understand the challenges that companies face now, because in order to get there, we need to survive the present. And it's finding that right balance, which is difficult. And I do understand that I would say that most stakeholders will not be very happy. Some will say that we've gone too far. Some will say we haven't gone far enough, which to me is an indication that probably our landing zone is just about right. Again, let's see how that goes, because this is just the start of the process, not the end of the process, as you know. And to wrap up, I would like to thank you again for coming. This has been a very, very interesting exchange of views. I wish we had more time, because I could be talking to you for the rest of the day easily. Many interesting ideas. Some of them we have already considered them. You will see them come to light shortly. So it is good to see that we have your support on some of the initiatives that we will be proposing. It is good to see that you have not just all these different backgrounds, but different perspectives, and yet what you have in common is way more than the differences you have expressed. So your openness to being digital, but also your admitted less familiarity with some of the issues. I mean, being young is not necessarily being digital, and you should not assume that by definition, as being older does not necessarily mean that you are info excluded, which is often the case, but still a lot of interesting contributions and thoughts on how people react, what people fear, and that is different across the EU because people have different backgrounds. The history of each nation influences how you feel, how much you trust the state, how much you distrust the state, how willing are you to share information or not, how do you value defense, how do you value investments in other topics, why are some so focused on sustainability and others now so focused on defense. We also need to understand that Europe is made of all these different people with all those different backgrounds and obviously different priorities. And the fact that we have come this far as 27 member states that have managed to combine all these differences into a successful common project is really outstanding. And the potential to do better is huge, but obviously it is in your interest more than anything, the new generations. So we will do our best on our end. This Commission has very ambitious goals. We have lots of proposals to put on the table. We will need, of course, the support from Member States and from the European Parliament, but we will need your support on the ground. I mean, I will be talking to also young people in every single Member State that I'll be visiting, and to many other stakeholders to try and understand first the concerns so that we can address them properly when we present our proposals, but also to find allies on the ground, people who can help this bottom-up approach to be combined with this top-down that we initiate here in Brussels to assure you that we are indeed paying attention to what is happening outside this so-called bubble. We do understand what is happening on the ground. That's where we come from. We are people, normal people who have normal lives and families and friends. So we know what is happening on the ground in the different member states. But we want to have that feedback. I hope that you have also benefited from this exchange. You are all very smart, very interesting. It was a real pleasure, a delight to be here with you today. I have learned a lot, and I will try as best as possible to include your ideas, your suggestions, your approaches in the initiatives to be put forward. I hope we can meet each other in possibly different settings. And in the meantime, all the best. Save well. And I wish you the best of luck for your studies, your works, your job searches, everything. I wish it all goes the best possible way to you. Thank you very, very much.
A big thank you to the Commissioner and a big thank you to each and every one of our participants as a parting shot from my side. My colleagues know that I have a tendency to get easily and quickly bored in meetings. I was not bored, not for a second. It was interesting to listen to each and every one of you and to hear those ideas that are not only going to be relegated to the future of Europe, you know, you're the future of us old people, but stuff that's actually really, really important today. And we hear you. So, again, a big thank you to you here. Big thank you to our audience online. And I look forward to hearing more from you. Thank you.